Hello and welcome to the YouTube channel of MP Rugs. Hope you and your family are doing well. Today's video is actually part 2 in the series of video about Turkish workshops. This is about the Hereke rugs. In the first part, I talked about workshops that were direct descendants of the imperial workshop that was created by Abdülmecid I, the Sultan of when the empire dissolved, the Ottoman Empire, when it dissolved in 1920, there was basically the workers who were in the workshop became unemployed. They were basically, the workshop was dissolved, and some of those weavers bonded together. They either opened their own shops, as I've talked about in some of my previous video, or they created the association, like for example the Aussie Pack that is best known. Well, in this video I'm going to be talking about more modern workshops. These are workshops that were basically created by what we oftentimes say is the third generation, the second generation. These were basically the children and the workers who of the workshops, they then started their own businesses. And some of these, and generally speaking, we're talking from 1945, 1950 until about the late 80s. And that's when, about in the late 80s, beginning of 90s, that's when you see the drop-off in the production of the Turkish rugs. It also coincided with the economic and basically social unrest that happened in Turkey during the 90s. They went through horrible economic times, and a lot of the workshops basically went out of business. Also, due to the influx of the Chinese that came in and basically obliterated the market. As I oftentimes talk about in my other videos, if you go to Turkey right now and you look at any of these types of beautiful pieces, chances are the vast majority of them will be replicas made in China. And this is something that I've oftentimes talked about in my videos. It is something I want you to be aware of. But we focus on the genuine, the older pieces. There's a huge collectors community out there worldwide who has a passion for these amazing pieces. So, and I've been getting a lot of questions about the different workshops. And so what I did in the previous video, I talked about some of the original offspring from the Imperial workshop. Well, in this video right here, I'm going to be introducing you to 4 pieces. We have and again, I'm going to apologize up front. My pronunciation is horrible, so forgive me if I pronounce them wrong. We have the Durudre workshop right here, an older piece. We have the Shekar right here, this gorgeous piece. Then we have probably the 2 that are best known, contemporary ones. These are workshops that made rugs into the early 90s and beyond. We have the KNG and we have Khanali. The Khanali one is the one that there's actually still a shop available, but from what I have been told and from what I have been by members of the family as well as by some of the people that deal with them, most of those rugs were made up until 1910, 1915. They haven't produced really, they're not making any more rugs. They are selling off the remaining pieces that they have. That's what I've been told. But these are 4 contemporary, more recent workshops that came about. And so to basically, the oldest one of the 4, they have a direct line, is the Durudre. My Americanized and my German-minded brain it just, there are some words I cannot pronounce. Durudre is definitely one of those words. Um, I apologize um, for mispronouncing it, but this is a perfect example. This is a workshop that came about right about the end of World War II, in the basically from the mid 40s, late 40s, beginning of the 50s. And this is a small workshop. They made mainly 1010 quality pieces with a tree of life design, like you see here with the floral patterns. This is very classic. They created these beautiful pieces, or we have, for example, another older piece that we had that was recently sold. Absolutely stunning, perfect example of what the old Turkish workmanship is all about. Really nice pieces, but also great pieces to showcase why. Some of them basically became not obsolete, but they were really good at what they were doing. But then they basically they couldn't keep up with the times. In other words, and I'm going to use another example. We have the Shekar workshop right here. This is a gorgeous piece right here. This is a 1212 quality. So we're talking about 12 knots per centimeter. This one is a 1010 quality. What do they both have in common? They both share that same passion for the designs and everything. The Shekar rugs, same as the Durudre, very classic pictorial pieces with animals and everything, which was really great until they fell out of favor with the buyers at the time. There was just a genuine change in taste, and because of it, and because of they're very special in what they did. They basically stuck to a few designs. That's what they focused on. They were also very small workshops. We're talking basically family businesses. And oftentimes when family businesses, when you lose the offspring, when the next generations either don't come around or they just don't have the interest to continue in the same trade, that's where you lose the business, and eventually, obviously, it shuts down. So, but you have really nice pieces right here. These are classic with the older, we're talking right about, I'm going to say 1950. This is, and then by the 1980s, they were one of the first workshops to basically call it a day. Again, the Durudre mainly made pieces in the 1010 quality. You can see it in the pictures, 10 knots per centimeter. They oftentimes, so you have about a million knots per square meter. And generally speaking, this is the sizes of the types of rugs that they made. These are not workshops that are known for making very large pieces. Now, one of the most popular workshops that came at the end of the war, that based in the starting in the 50s and 60s, is a KNG, really popular. The problem with the KNG, and I'm going to say this up front, they almost always 1212 quality. So 12 knots per centimeter, about 1.44 million knots per square meter. Problem with this is their signature was so easily copied that you will still today find Hereke rugs, but you have to be very mindful of the fact that there is a very good chance that if they offer you a new piece with a KNG signature, there is a good chance that it is fake. This is a workshop that basically closed their doors in the 90s. It was founded by two business partners. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the names. They're right here. You can look at them. out of respect, I'll let you sort out how to pronounce. We always just simply refer to them as KNG. But really beautiful pieces. And I just wanted you to see this. They are also popular with this bird design. This floral, the KNGs almost always 1212, and the designs were almost always either birds in cages or they had, um, you can see them in the pictures there. We have had a number of them. They're almost always this size, which is almost perfect for framing. And this is something that a lot of these workshops have in common, because starting in the 60s and 70s, a lot of people purchased these rugs and then had them framed. This is also not something that you had in the old days. So, KNG rug right here. Be mindful of the signature, the design right here with the floral piece, or like I said, with the other various ones, you can see it right there. So last we have what is basically the most contemporary workshop, the Khanali. Here we have the tortoise trainer, one of the most classic, beautiful designs. This is actually one of my favorites, and it's an amazing 2020 quality. For those of you that are into the Turkish rugs, I just want you to imagine, this is a quality that you do not get in Persian rugs. This is something that you, generally speaking, only find in genuine Turkish rugs or replicas that are made in China. And the 2020 refers to 20 knots per centimeter. That's 2 double knots per 1 single millimeter. 4,000,000 knots per square inch. But the Khanali workshop, they also had larger pieces. They had larger rugs. Generally speaking, the finer the rug, the smaller it is, because a small rug like this will cost you, I'm just going to give you an example. This piece right here, this is the size of 2 pieces of paper. This one is 50 centimeters by 31 centimeters. I'm just going to give you an example. This piece right here, you can almost buy, you see this 5 foot by 7 foot, 1.5 meter by 2 meter? You can buy that rug for the same price as you can buy this tiny one. This tiny one would take a lot more time to weave than this large rug right there. Even though this is something you lay on the ground, you can hang them. Still, people hang on walls, but we have seen them go as large as 2 meter by 3 meters, 7 foot by 10 foot. And even they, the really big ones, are not that much more expensive than this tiny one right here. But this is a workshop that existed. It was started by by a workshop up until the mid-90s, and that's when it started slowing down. And they were one of the last ones to basically close the door. Now, there's still a shop from what I understand, but as I have been told, they are not producing any more rugs. They're basically selling the last pieces that they have. Sometimes, from what I've also been told, they still at times take custom orders. But again, generally speaking, they're basically gone. Now, what you will also notice on the newer pieces, and when I talk about newer pieces, again, we're talking about the more contemporary workshops that were really that came about in the 50s and 60s. One of the things that they have in common is that the colors are really much more vibrant. They are much more life-like. They're also, unlike in the older pieces, there is an abundance in colors. For example, I'm just going to use this tortoise teacher right here. In the old days, and we're talking pre-1950, they could not have produced this type of rug because the colors, the shading, the die making, the technology did not exist. This is also why a lot of folks, when they talk about the Hereke rugs, when they talk about value, when they talk about the passion, they prefer older pieces over the newer ones. There's just something different. I oftentimes compare them with cars. If you look at the cars, I'm just going to use Mercedes as an example. If you opened a closed and classic Mercedes, my parents had them in the 70s and in the 80s. That thing was a beast. That door, you knew what you had in your hands. Versus nowadays, even a Mercedes or BMW or whatever car, when you open them, they feel almost like plastic. Now, as I always tell my clients, I always have new cars. I have never had a passion for older cars because to me a car was a vehicle that gets me from point A to point B. I did not look at it in terms of collectible or something, and I'm not mechanically inclined. So when I look at an older car, I'm thinking, oh dear God, this is going to cost me. Versus I have obviously friends who are very passionate about the older cars. And when it comes to the rugs, I always tell people this is where the difference is. When it comes to the Hereke rugs, my passion is for the older ones. That is because the way that they were woven back then and the thickness, the density, the quality of the silk of the old, in my opinion, superior to that of the more recent pieces. Having said that, if there's nothing wrong with the newer ones, and the newer ones have features like the colors and designs that the older ones don't have. So there's always a trade-off. For many of you that are collectors, if you have a serious passion, it's not just about owning one or two pieces. You want to have several pieces. And that is where basically I've had so many clients and I've told them, I said, you know what, there's nothing wrong with having a kanji. If you're going to have a series of Hereke rugs, by all means, consider adding a kanji into your collection. Just like with watches, just like with anything else, diversity is the name of the game. Um, However, when people ask me about my passion, I always tell them old over new. Having said that, this piece right here, I hope I will never sell because the tortoise trainer has a beautiful story. Talked about it in one of my other videos, and it's just an amazing piece that I would actually have absolutely no problems. It is hanging in my office right now, and it's something I like looking at every day. It's absolutely beautiful. So, having said it, passions for the old pieces, but there are exceptions to be made. So, before I say my quick goodbyes to you, first of all, I hope this video answers some of your questions. I've had so many people who have a passion for the Turkish Hereke rugs, but there's very little literature out there. And so a lot of people always turn to our channel for information. They also oftentimes, almost literally on a daily basis, they ask me questions. I oftentimes feature them in my videos here where I answer their questions. And the same thing, and I make myself available and I point this out in every one of my videos. Obviously, if you like our channel, it's about handmade carpets, feel free to hit the subscribe button. We produce videos on a monthly basis. I always make it a point of having the rugs that I'm going to be discussing available. I don't like to just simply talk about things without having them. However, having said that, I make an exception by featuring also answering the questions that you have. So I've had many of you that email me almost every day with questions about rugs, and below is a link that tells you what type of pictures I need and everything. It's a quick video. Feel free to look at it. Email me the pictures. I can take a look at a rug you have. I can give you basic information. I always make it a point. I will not appraise them because I don't think I can value a rug without holding it in my hands and actually seeing, feeling, smelling the condition, so to speak. But I can tell you basic, 90% of the time, I can give you uh, brief information about the type of rug you have. So if that is something you want to do, the link is below. Also, as I mentioned to you, I'm going to be, it's a video channel that is all about handmade carpets from around the world. So if you like us, feel free to hit the subscribe button. Now, I'm going to be coming back to you with many more videos to come. I hope you enjoyed this one about the Hereke rugs. Until we see each other again, best wishes, greetings from all of us. Take care. Bye-bye.